The emergency beacon cut through space like a scream. Commander Vexhai of the Galactic Rescue Consortium stared at the readings on his display screen. The signal came from deep within the HFY Nebula, a place where ships went to disappear forever. 3 months, Dr. Yilnara said from her station. Her healing appendages moved nervously over her equipment. The human cargo vessel has been missing for 3 months, Grunt Torques growled from the back of the bridge. The massive Krogian warrior had seen too many rescue missions end in disappointment. Probably nothing left but metal and bones. Commander Vexhai's scaled fingers drummed against his command chair. The Zentari were known for being careful, and this mission felt wrong. The HFY Nebula was home to dozens of hostile species. No one survived there for 3 months, sir, the navigation officer called out. We're approaching the source of the beacon. Sensors show a crash site on the jungle moon Xeris 7. Vexhai felt his stomach twist. Xeris 7 was one of the most dangerous worlds in known space. The Xeris stalkers that lived there were apex predators. They hunted in organized packs and had wiped out 3 separate colony attempts. Adult stalkers stood as tall as a human, with razor-sharp claws, powerful jaws full of venom and intelligence that rivaled most sentient species. Take us down, Vexhai ordered, but keep the engines running. The rescue ship descended through thick clouds toward the jungle canopy. Through the viewport, Vexhai could see the wreckage of the human vessel. The cargo ship had crashed nose first into a clearing, leaving a long scar in the earth. The hull was cracked open like an egg, with various sections scattered across the jungle floor. Life signs? Vexhai asked. Dr. Yilnara studied her medical scanner. Her large eyes widened with surprise. 1 human life sign, strong and stable. But sir, there are 47 other life forms clustered around the same location. Torques checked his weapons. Stalkers? The size suggests juveniles, but yes. Xeris stalkers. Vexhai felt ice in his veins. If there were 47 juvenile stalkers in one place, it meant they were part of a massive pack. Adult stalkers would be nearby and they would not welcome visitors. The rescue team landed their ship at a safe distance from the wreckage. They put on their environmental suits and checked their emergency equipment. Torques carried a heavy plasma rifle, while Dr. Yilnara brought her medical kit and scanner. Vexhai carried a standard sidearm and tried to look confident. They approached the crashed ship carefully. The jungle around them was too quiet. No birds, no insects, no movement. Even the plants seemed to lean away from the wreckage. The cargo holds are empty, Dr. Yilnara reported as they climbed through a breach in the hull. Completely stripped. Even the metal plating has been removed in some sections. They followed her scanner deeper into the ship. The corridors were dark and twisted from the impact. Emergency lighting flickered weakly in some sections. Their footsteps echoed strangely in the damaged vessel. The life signs are coming from what used to be Cargo Bay 7, Dr. Yilnara whispered. They reached a doorway that had been bent open during the crash. Vexhai peered around the corner and nearly dropped his weapon. A human male sat cross-legged in the center of the cargo bay. He looked thin but healthy, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. His clothing was patched and worn but clean. Around him, scattered across the floor of the bay, were 47 juvenile Xeris stalkers. The cubs were about the size of large dogs, but already showing the distinctive features that made adult stalkers so feared. Their sleek bodies were covered in dark scales that shifted color with their mood. Sharp claws extended from their paws and their elongated heads held rows of developing fangs. Small venom sacs were visible behind their jawlines. But instead of acting like deadly predators, the cubs were playing. Some wrestled with each other, rolling across the floor in mock combat. Others dozed in small piles using each other as pillows. A few had gathered around the human, accepting small pieces of food from his hands. The human noticed the rescue team and looked up with a smile. Oh, hello there. I wasn't expecting company. Vexhai stared in shock. The cubs had noticed the newcomers too, but they didn't attack. Instead, they moved closer to the human, making soft chirping sounds that seemed almost like purring. Lieutenant Marcus Chen, Human Cargo Fleet, the man said calmly. I assume you're here about the distress beacon. Dr. Yilnara stepped forward, her scanner beeping frantically. Sir, you're surrounded by Xeris stalkers. Juvenile or not, they're extremely dangerous predators. Chen reached out to scratch behind the ear of a cub that had wandered close to him. The creature leaned into his touch, making a contented rumbling sound. These little ones? They're harmless. Well, mostly harmless. They can be a bit rough when they play. Torques raised his weapon. Those things killed an entire research team last year. Adults did that, Chen said firmly. These are babies. They were orphaned when their pack was killed in a territorial fight. I found them about 2 months ago, nearly starved to death. Vexhai tried to process what he was seeing. Xeris stalkers had never been successfully domesticated. They were born with aggressive instincts and pack loyalty that made them attack anything that wasn't part of their family group. Even cubs were known to be violent toward other species. How are you still alive? Dr. Yilnara asked, taking cautious steps into the cargo bay. Chen shrugged. I fed them. Took care of them when they were sick. Kept them warm during the cold nights. They're not monsters, just animals trying to survive. One of the larger cubs approached Dr. Yilnara curiously. She froze as it sniffed at her equipment, but the creature simply lost interest and wandered back to Chen. This is impossible, Vexhai muttered. His training said that Chen should be dead. Every piece of scientific data about Xeris stalkers said this situation could not exist. Chen stood up slowly, and the cubs moved with him. They didn't crowd him or knock him over, but they stayed close like a protective formation. I know it seems strange. It surprised me too at first. We need to get you out of here, Vexhai said. The ship is ready for immediate departure. Chen looked around at the cubs and his expression grew serious. I can't leave them. They depend on me. Sir, those are wild predators, Dr. Yilnara said gently. They belong in their natural habitat. This is their natural habitat, Chen replied. And right now I'm the only family they have. You wouldn't ask me to abandon 47 children, would you? Vexhai felt the weight of the situation settling on him. They had found the missing human alive, which was already a miracle. But now Chen refused to be rescued, and he was claiming ownership of a pack of creatures that could grow up to be deadly killers. We need to discuss this, Vexhai said finally, as if responding to the tension in his voice. The cubs moved closer to Chen. Their playful demeanor shifted to something more alert, more protective. 47 pairs of intelligent eyes focused on the rescue team. For the first time since entering the cargo bay, Vexhai felt like he was looking at predators. Dr. Yilnara activated her medical scanner and began taking detailed readings of both Chen and the cubs. The results made no sense according to everything she knew about xenobiology. Lieutenant Chen, she said carefully, I need to ask you some questions. When you first encountered these cubs, did they show any signs of aggression? Chen sat back down among the cubs, and several immediately climbed onto his lap or pressed against his sides. They were scared and hungry. A few of the smaller ones tried to bite me at first, but they were too weak to do any real damage. And you weren't afraid? Commander Vexhai asked. Of course I was afraid, Chen admitted. But they were just babies. Babies who needed help. He gently moved a cub that was trying to chew on his sleeve. I've always been good with animals. My family had dogs, cats, even rescued a few wild creatures when I was growing up on Earth. Torques kept his weapon ready but lowered. Xeris stalkers are not Earth animals, human. They are engineered killers. Chen looked at the large cubs scattered around him. Maybe their adults are. But these little ones just want to be fed and kept safe and loved, just like any other baby. Dr. Yilnara studied her scanner readings with growing amazement. This is extraordinary. The cubs show significant biochemical changes from normal Xeris stalker development patterns. What kind of changes? Vexhai asked. Their natural aggression hormones are suppressed by nearly 70%. Meanwhile, their social bonding chemicals have increased to levels I've never seen in this species. She looked up from her scanner. It's as if their brain chemistry has been completely altered. Chen listened to this with interest. Is that why they're so affectionate? Possibly, but Lieutenant, your readings are equally unusual. Dr. Yilnara's voice carried a note of concern. Your reflexes have improved significantly beyond normal human ranges. Your healing factors show enhancement, and you're producing pheromones that shouldn't exist in human biology. Pheromones? Chen asked. Chemical signals. It appears you're communicating with the cubs on a molecular level, even when you're not consciously trying to. One of the cubs made a soft whistling sound, and Chen automatically whistled back. The cub's scales shifted to a lighter, more pleasant color. See? Dr. Yilnara pointed at her scanner. You just responded to a chemical communication without realizing it. The cub expressed contentment, and you acknowledged it. Vexhai felt his headache getting worse.
How is this possible?
Humans and Xeris stalkers evolved on different worlds and different star systems. I don't know. Dr. Yilnara admitted. But the bond between Lieutenant Chen and these cubs appears to be genuine and deep-rooted. They've essentially adopted each other. Chen scratched the head of a cub that had fallen asleep against his leg. They're good kids. A bit rough when they play, and they eat enormous amounts of food. But they're loyal and smart and surprisingly gentle. As if to prove his point, one of the larger cubs carefully carried a smaller one to Chen's side. The small cub had been limping slightly, and Chen examined its paw with practiced ease. "Stepped on something sharp again, didn't you?" Chen said gently. The cub made soft chirping sounds while Chen cleaned a small cut and applied what looked like plant-based medicine. "This one is always getting into trouble." "You've developed medical procedures for them?" Dr. Yilnara asked. "Had to. They're always getting hurt during play fights or exploration. I've learned which plants help with infections, how to set broken bones, even how to deal with their molting cycles." Vexhai realized that Chen had essentially become a Xeris stalker parent. The human had spent 2 months learning to care for creatures that most species considered impossible to approach safely. "Lieutenant, we need to discuss evacuation procedures," Vexhai said. "Our ship can accommodate you, but we cannot transport 47 dangerous predators." The mood in the cargo bay changed instantly. The cubs seemed to sense the tension in Vexhai's voice. They moved closer to Chen, forming a protective circle around him. Several of the larger cubs made low growling sounds. "They don't like it when people speak harshly near me," Chen explained. "They're very protective." "We're not trying to threaten you," Dr. Yilnara said quickly. "We're here to rescue you." "I appreciate that," Chen said. "But I can't abandon my family." "Those are not your family," Torques rumbled. "They are predators that will grow into killers." The cubs' growling intensified. A few of them showed their developing fangs. Chen placed his hands on the nearest cubs, and they gradually calmed down. "They are my family," Chen said firmly, "and I am theirs. We've taken care of each other for 2 months. They've kept me warm during cold nights. They've brought me food when I was sick. They've protected me from the adult stalkers that occasionally patrol this area." "Protected you from adults?" Vexhai asked with surprise. "The cubs mark me with their scent. Adult stalkers recognize the pack markings and leave us alone. It's like having a passport that says I belong here." Dr. Yilnara's scanner beeped urgently. "Commander, I'm detecting movement outside the ship. Large life forms moving in coordinated patterns." Torques moved to the damaged wall and peered through a gap in the metal. "Adult stalkers. At least 12 of them surrounding our position." Chen stood up calmly. "They probably smelled your ship and came to investigate. Adults don't like strangers in their territory. Can you control them like you do the cubs?" Vexhai asked. "Control is the wrong word," Chen said. "But I might be able to communicate with them. The cubs have been teaching me their language." "Stalkers don't have a language," Dr. Yilnara said. "They do. It's just not verbal. It's chemical signals, body postures, and specific vocalizations. Very complex, actually." The growling outside the ship grew louder. Through the gaps in the hull, they could see massive shadows moving past. "We're trapped," Torques said, checking his weapon's charge level. Chen looked around at his cubs, then at the rescue team. "Maybe not. Let me try something." He walked toward the damaged wall, and all 47 cubs followed him. They arranged themselves around Chen in a specific formation that looked almost ceremonial. "What are you doing?" Vexhai asked nervously. "Introducing you to the neighborhood," Chen replied. "Just try to look peaceful, and whatever happens, don't shoot unless I tell you to." Chen took a deep breath and stepped through the breach in the hull, surrounded by his pack of cubs. The rescue team had no choice but to follow, stepping out into the alien jungle where death waited in the shadows. The adult Xeris stalkers emerged from the jungle like living shadows. Each one stood nearly 2 meters tall, their muscular bodies covered in scales that shifted from green to black depending on their mood. Their claws were longer than Chen's fingers, and their fangs dripped with natural venom. 12 pairs of intelligent predatory eyes focused on the rescue team. Chen stepped forward calmly, his cubs arranged around him in their protective formation. He made a series of soft clicking sounds with his tongue, followed by a low whistle that seemed to come from deep in his chest. The lead stalker, a massive female with scars across her face, tilted her head and responded with her own complex series of sounds. Her scale shifted to a lighter color. "What are they saying?" Dr. Yilnara whispered. "I told her we're not a threat," Chen said quietly. "She's asking why strangers are in pack territory." Chen made more sounds, incorporating hand gestures and subtle changes in his posture. The cubs around him began making their own soft chirping noises, as if adding their voices to the conversation. The scarred female moved closer, her massive head lowering to sniff at Chen. The rescue team tensed, but Chen remained perfectly still. The adult stalker's examination was thorough, her nose investigating Chen's hair, clothes, and hands. Finally, she stepped back and made a rumbling sound that seemed almost like approval. "She recognizes the pack scent on me," Chen explained. "The cubs have marked me as family, so she accepts that I belong here." More adult stalkers emerged from the jungle. Chen counted at least 20 now, all moving in the coordinated patterns that made them such effective hunters. But instead of attacking, they began a complex ritual of circling, sniffing, and making various vocalizations. "It's like a pack meeting," Chen said with wonder. "They're deciding what to do about you." Commander HFY felt sweat running down his back despite his environmental suit's climate control. "Can you ask them to let us leave peacefully?" Chen made more sounds, and several of the adults responded. The conversation went on for several minutes, with cubs occasionally adding their own voices to the discussion. "There's a problem," Chen said finally. "They say the territory boundaries have changed. There are hostile packs moving through the area, and it's not safe for strangers to travel alone." "We have a ship," Torques said. "We can fly out." "They don't understand aircraft," Chen replied. "To them, anything that enters their territory by land needs pack protection to leave safely." Dr. Yilnara's scanner suddenly began beeping urgently. "Commander, I'm detecting massive seismic activity. The readings are off the charts." HFY checked his own equipment. "Planetary core instability. This whole moon is becoming geologically unstable." The adult stalkers had noticed the ground vibrations too. Their scales shifted to darker, more agitated colors, and they began making sharp warning calls to each other. "How long do we have?" Chen asked. "Less than 24 hours before major seismic events make evacuation impossible," HFY said. "We need to leave now." Chen looked around at his cubs, then at the adult stalkers who were growing more agitated by the minute. "I can't just abandon them. The cubs won't survive without care, and if the moon becomes unstable, the whole pack could be in danger. Our ship can't carry 47 stalkers," Dr. Yilnara said. "The life support systems aren't designed for their biology." "Then we need another solution," Chen said firmly. One of the cubs tugged at Chen's leg, making urgent chirping sounds. Chen knelt down to listen, and the cub began making a complex series of gestures with its claws. "What's it saying?" HFY asked. "She's telling me about a safe place," Chen said slowly. "Somewhere the pack could go if the territory becomes dangerous, but it's far away beyond the hunting grounds." The scarred female adult made more sounds, and Chen responded. Their conversation became increasingly animated, with other adults joining in. "They know about the geological instability," Chen translated. "They've been sensing it for days. Some packs have already left the moon, but these cubs are too young for the journey to safe worlds." Another tremor shook the ground, stronger than before. In the distance they could hear the sound of trees falling. "Lieutenant Chen," HFY said urgently, "we have to go. The Rescue Council can arrange for a proper xenobiological team to return and help relocate the stalkers, but we can't wait any longer." Chen stood up, his face set with determination. "No. By the time a team gets organized and returns, it will be too late. These cubs need help now." "What are you proposing?" Dr. Yilnara asked. "I've learned their language and their customs. I understand their pack structure and their needs. If we can find a way to transport them to a safe world, I can help them establish a new territory." "You're talking about staying with them," HFY realized. "I'm talking about taking responsibility for my family," Chen said. "I won't abandon them just because it's convenient." The cubs seemed to understand the seriousness of the conversation. They moved closer to Chen, pressing against him for comfort. Several of the smaller ones made soft whimpering sounds. "Our ship's cargo hold could be modified," Dr. Yilnara said thoughtfully. "If we remove the non-essential equipment and adjusted the atmosphere mixture, we might be able to create a temporary habitat. The journey to the nearest suitable world would take 6 days," HFY said. "We'd need massive amounts of food, water, and medical supplies." Chen looked around at the adult stalkers who were watching the conversation with obvious intelligence. "They understand more than we think. If I explain the situation, they might be willing to help gather supplies." Another tremor shook the ground. and this time it was followed by a distant rumbling that sounded like an avalanche. "We're running out of time," Torques said. Chen made a decision that would change everything. He turned to face the adult stalkers and began speaking in their complex language of sounds and gestures. His cubs gathered around him, adding their voices to his words. The adults listened intently, their scales shifting through various colors as they processed what Chen was telling them. Finally, the scarred female made a long, low sound that seemed to carry the weight of ancient authority. "She agrees," Chen said with relief. "The pack will help us prepare for evacuation. But there's one condition." "What condition?" Vexhai asked. "I have to promise to protect the cubs as if they were my own offspring, even if it means staying with them permanently on the new world." Chen looked at each member of the rescue team, then down at the 47 cubs who had become his responsibility. "I accept." The next 18 hours became a frantic race against time and geology. The ground shook every few minutes now, and the distant sound of rock slides echoed through the jungle. But instead of chaos, Chen's decision had created something remarkable: cooperation between species that had never worked together before. The adult stalkers organized themselves into hunting and gathering parties with military precision. They brought back fruits, roots, and freshly caught game that Dr. Yilnara analyzed to ensure they would be safe for the cubs during the journey. Meanwhile, Chen worked with the rescue team to modify their ship's cargo hold. The atmosphere mixture needs to be 60% standard oxygen, 40% nitrogen, with traces of the native gases the cubs are used to, Dr. Yilnara explained as they installed additional life support systems. Torques welded new support struts while complaining under his breath. "Never thought I'd be building accommodations for predators that could eat me." "They won't eat you," Chen said, carrying in bedding materials that the adult stalkers had gathered from soft jungle plants. "They're surprisingly picky eaters. Mostly they like fish and small game birds." Commander Vexhai was coordinating with the Galactic Ecological Preservation Council through their ship's communication system. The conversation was not going well. "You want to relocate 47 juvenile Xeris stalkers to a preserve world?" The council representative's voice crackled with static and disbelief. "Do you understand how dangerous these creatures are?" "I understand that they're orphaned children who need protection," Vexhai replied firmly. "And I have a human here who has successfully formed a pack bond with them." "Impossible. Xeris stalkers cannot form interspecies bonds." Dr. Yilnara stepped up to the communication console. "Counselor, I'm transmitting my medical and behavioral analysis data. The biochemical changes in both the human and the cubs are unprecedented, but absolutely real." There was a long pause while the council reviewed the data. "This is extraordinary. Dr. Yilnara, are you certain of these readings?" "Completely certain. Lieutenant Chen has achieved something that challenges everything we know about xenobiology. He's not just caring for these cubs. He's become their pack alpha through a combination of human adaptability and what appears to be spontaneous biochemical evolution." Another massive tremor shook the ship, and several pieces of equipment crashed to the floor. Through the viewport, they could see geysers of superheated steam erupting from cracks in the ground. "We need a decision now," Vexhai said into the communicator. "This moon is becoming uninhabitable. The preserve world Kepler 442c has suitable terrain and climate for Xeris stalkers," the council representative said finally. "But the human must understand that this is a permanent assignment. If he becomes the cubs' pack leader, he cannot abandon them later." Chen appeared in the doorway of the cargo hold, covered in dirt and plant matter from helping prepare the cubs' temporary habitat. "I heard that, and I understand the commitment I'm making. Lieutenant, you're talking about spending years, possibly decades, isolated from human society," the counselor warned. "These cubs will grow into adult predators who may never be safe around other species." "They're safe around me," Chen said simply, "and I'm responsible for them. That's not something humans take lightly." The cubs had been watching the preparation activities with obvious intelligence. Now they began helping in their own way, carrying materials and arranging bedding with surprising care. The largest cubs worked together to move heavy items while the smallest ones handled delicate tasks like organizing medical supplies. "Look at them," Dr. Yilnara said with amazement. "They understand that they're preparing for a journey. Their cooperation level is beyond anything recorded for this species." One of the cubs approached Commander Vexhai and made soft, chirping sounds. When Vexhai didn't respond, The cub gently tugged at his equipment belt and led him to a section of the cargo hold that needed additional securing. "It's trying to help me," Vexhai said in wonder. "They're all trying to help," Chen said. "They know we're working together to keep them safe." The adult stalkers had been making regular patrols around the ship, protecting the evacuation efforts from other jungle creatures displaced by the seismic activity. Now the scarred female approached Chen with something in her mouth. She dropped a collection of objects at his feet: carved bone ornaments, polished stones, and what looked like preserved plant materials. "What is that?" Dr. Yilnara asked. Chen examined the items carefully. "Pack markers. She's giving me the symbols of pack leadership." He looked up at the massive predator with genuine emotion. "She's making it official." The scarred female made a series of complex vocalizations, and Chen responded in kind. Other adult stalkers gathered around, adding their voices to what was clearly a ceremonial exchange. "What's happening?" Vexhai asked. "They're transferring custody of the cubs to me," Chen said, his voice thick with the weight of responsibility. "In their culture, this is like a formal adoption ceremony." The cubs seemed to understand what was taking place. They gathered around Chen, touching him with their noses and making soft, contented sounds. Even the most playful ones became still and serious. The ceremony concluded when the scarred female placed one of the bone ornaments around Chen's neck. The other adults touched their foreheads to his shoulders in a gesture of respect. "You are now officially a Xeris stalker pack leader," Dr. Yilnara observed. "I don't think that's ever happened before." Another violent tremor reminded them that time was running out. Steam vents were opening in the jungle around them, and the air was becoming thick with sulfurous gases. "All cubs into the cargo hold," Chen ordered, and 47 juvenile predators obediently filed into their temporary home. They arranged themselves efficiently in the space, with larger cubs helping smaller ones find comfortable spots. The adult stalkers began their own departure, moving away into the jungle in organized groups. The scarred female was the last to leave. She approached Chen one final time and made a sound that was clearly a farewell. "She says to take care of the future of the pack," Chen translated, "and to remember that I am always welcome in stalker territory, wherever that might be." With that, the magnificent predator disappeared into the jungle, leaving Chen alone with his new family. "Cargo hold sealed and pressurized," Torques reported. "Life support system stable. Navigation course plotted for Kepler 442c, the pilot announced. Commander Vexhai took one last look at the jungle moon that was tearing itself apart. "Take us out of here." As their ship lifted off, Chen sat among his cubs in the cargo hold, wearing the bone ornament of pack leadership. The cubs pressed close to him, seeking comfort during their first experience with spaceflight. "Are you sure about this?" Dr. Yilnara asked through the intercom. Chen looked around at 47 pairs of trusting eyes. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." 3 years later, Commander Vexhai returned to Kepler 442c for what was supposed to be a routine inspection of the Xeris Stalker Preserve. What he found defied every expectation he had carried with him from that desperate evacuation. The landing pad was constructed from local stone and earth design engineering principles. It was functional, well-maintained, and surrounded by carefully planned gardens that provided both beauty and practical food sources. This was not the rough survival camp he had expected to find. "Commander Vexhai," a familiar voice called out. "Welcome back to new territory." Chen emerged from a nearby building, but he was almost unrecognizable from the thin, desperate man they had rescued. His body was lean and muscular from years of physical work. His skin bore the ritual scarring that marked him as a stalker pack leader, and his movements had the fluid grace of someone who had learned to think like a predator. Behind him came a magnificent sight: the original 47 cubs, now fully grown into powerful adult stalkers. But instead of the aggressive, territorial behavior that characterized wild stalkers, these moved with calm confidence. They arranged themselves in a protective formation around Chen, but their scales showed the light colors of contentment rather than the dark tones of aggression. "This is incredible," Dr. Yilnara breathed, taking readings with her scanner. "The adults are maintaining pack cohesion while showing no signs of territorial hostility toward strangers." "They know you're friends," Chen explained, reaching out to touch the head of a massive male stalker. "Luna here remembers you from the ship. She was one of the smallest cubs then." The stalker made a soft rumbling sound and allowed Dr. Yilnara to approach for a closer examination. Her scanner readings showed healthy, Stable biochemistry with the same enhanced social bonding markers they had detected in the cubs years ago. The neurochemical changes have persisted into adulthood, Dr. Yilnara reported with excitement. This proves that the bonding process creates permanent alterations in stalker brain structure. Torques looked around at the settlement with professional interest. You've built quite a community here. We had to, Chen said proudly. The original 47 have had cubs of their own. 3 generations now with over 200 stalkers total. As if summoned by his words, smaller figures began emerging from various buildings. Juvenile stalkers of different ages approached curiously, showing none of the fear or aggression that wild young would display toward strangers. The smallest ones, barely larger than house cats, climbed up Chen's legs and perched on his shoulders. The second and third generation cubs have never known humans as anything but family, Chen explained. To them, interspecies cooperation is completely natural. Commander Vexhai was stunned by the implications. You've created an entirely new subspecies of Xeris stalker. Not created, Chen corrected. Just helped them become what they always had the potential to be. Stalkers are naturally social and intelligent. In the wild, they're aggressive because they have to fight for survival. Here, they don't need to fight. They can focus on learning and growing and building. They toured the settlement, which was far more sophisticated than any temporary preserve should have been. There were workshops where stalkers crafted tools using their natural claws and human-taught techniques. Gardens provided both food and medicinal plants. A central gathering area served as both a community meeting place and a classroom where Chen taught young stalkers about agriculture, basic medicine, and conflict resolution. How do you handle discipline? Dr. Yilnara asked as they watched Chen work with a group of teenage stalkers who were learning to weave nets for fishing. Same way any parent handles it, Chen replied. Consistent rules, clear consequences, and lots of patience. Stalkers are incredibly smart once they trust you enough to learn. One of the nets tangled, and the young stalker working on it made frustrated growling sounds. Chen moved over to help, showing the teenager how to untangle the mess without starting over completely. The key is understanding that they're not pets, Chen continued. They're partners. Each one has their own personality, their own strengths and challenges. My job is to help them develop their potential while keeping the pack safe and united. And what about your own needs? Vexhai asked. Don't you miss human society? Chen considered the question while a cub playfully tried to steal his hat. I won't lie and say it hasn't been lonely sometimes. But look around you, Commander. This isn't just a preserve anymore. It's a new kind of civilization. We've proven that humans and stalkers can build something together that neither species could create alone. As if to emphasize his point, several adult stalkers approached carrying what appeared to be a formal document. They presented it to Chen with obvious ceremony. What's that? Dr. Yilnara asked. Chen read the document, which was written in the complex symbolic language that the stalkers had developed under his guidance. His face broke into a huge smile. They're proposing to establish a formal embassy program. They want to send representatives to other worlds to teach other species what we've learned about interspecies cooperation. Stalker ambassadors? Vexhai asked in amazement. Why not? Chen said. They're intelligent, loyal, and now they understand that not all conflicts need to be resolved through violence. They could be incredible peacekeepers. The implications hit Vexhai like a physical blow. Chen hadn't just saved 47 orphaned cubs. He had created a new model for interspecies relations that could change the entire galaxy. The Galactic Council needs to hear about this, Vexhai said. They already have, Chen replied. We've been in regular communication with the Preservation Council. 3 other worlds have requested similar programs. We're training teams of human stalker pairs to establish new communities. You're changing the definition of what it means to be human, Dr. Yilnara observed. Chen looked around at his extended family of over 200 stalkers, from the original adults who had accepted him as pack leader to the newest cubs who had never known a world without human guidance. Maybe, he said, but more importantly, we're changing what it means to be alive in a galaxy full of different species. We don't have to be afraid of each other. We don't have to fight over resources or territory. We can choose to be family instead. A young stalker approached and tugged on Chen's sleeve, pointing toward the horizon where 2 moons were rising in the alien sky. It was time for the evening meal, which had become a community-wide social event. You're welcome to stay for dinner, Chen offered. Fair warning, though, stalker table manners take some getting used to. As they walked toward the main gathering area, Commander Vexhai reflected on what they had witnessed. 3 years ago, they had rescued one human from certain death. Today, they had discovered a new form of civilization that could reshape the galaxy's understanding of what was possible between species. Commander, Dr. Yilnara said quietly, I think we need to revise our definition of a successful rescue mission. Vexhai watched Chen settle down among his pack. Surrounded by creatures that had once been considered the most dangerous predators in known space, now they were family, carefully sharing food and engaging in animated conversations using their complex language of sounds and gestures. I think you're right, Vexhai agreed. This isn't just a rescue anymore. It's proof that humans don't just survive impossible situations. They transform them into something better than anyone thought possible. In the distance, the sound of stalker cubs playing mixed with Chen's laughter, creating a harmony that had never existed before in the galaxy. It was the sound of a new kind of family and a new kind of hope.